Sometimes a person asks a question in a field that they know very little about. In other words, if a person not familiar with electronics at all says, what if the machine breaks down? An electronics person doesn't know what he's talking about. Is it the transistor, the capacitor, the circuit, the welding? If you don't talk about specifics, you're not communicating. When a person says to me, you can't predict the behavior of people, they're telling me that they don't know how to predict the behavior of people. And it's a subject that I can't do anything with. Unless they say, what do you do about people that insist that they're right? In other words, that's a specific question. A specific question is, how do you arrive at your decision? And why is your decision any better than any other decision? Now, the person that asks that question may or may not understand the answer. The assumption that people understand the answer that you give them is an assumption and projection. So, in order to check it out, if you have the time and you have a few people, you can say, what do you think I mean by that? And if they come off as something off, you know that they didn't get your intention. So, people that work on automobiles, say automobile engineers, not mechanics. Mechanics are a little different than engineers. Engineers understand the efficiency ratio of the parts, how much miles you get per gallon of fuel, and the technician understands the function of all the parts of the car. If you say automobiles are unsafe with conviction, that doesn't tell you how to make them safer. It doesn't tell you anything. Unless you say, if you make the brake drums an inch larger, the car will stop sooner. Something you can use. A non-answerable question is, how are you going to control the population? You can't control the population, it'll go right on multiply. The question is, how do you control the population? Not, you can't control the population, go right on multiplying, does not give you alternatives. When a person says, you can't make airplanes absolutely safe, well, what the hell does that tell you? Nothing, except that that person's limited ability to participate. A man would say, if you made airplanes safer, that doesn't tell you anything either. You can use. So you have to discredit that. If a person has who governments have been corrupt ever since history began, that doesn't tell you how to make them uncorrupt. They have nothing to offer unless you show a method of making a government work. Unless you say, I would like to know what your view is on this. If a person comes up to me and says, what is your view on automobile safety? I said, do you know anything about automobiles? The mechanisms, the valves, what they're for? No. Then you can't talk about the anatomy of the automobile. Do you understand that? If you know nothing about the human body, you can't talk about anatomy. Say people get sick and we don't always know why. Well, that's something that you can't do anything with. But if you say, you can't predict human beings, they all come from different environments and they have many different reactions. You can't make them all react the same way. That doesn't tell you anything, except a person's limitations that they're talking about. If you're not equipped to understand the answer, you can't ask questions. If a guy says, you know, electronics can fail too, well, that's participation, but offering nothing. Do you understand that? So, sometimes I will not engage a person if I feel they're not talking about the subject. And they say, you can't predict human behavior. Different people may have different views. So, well, that's true. Give me the different view. Let's make our building 10 stories high instead of 4. Why do you want to do that? Just talk about the subject. So, remember this. This is the thing you have to remember. People will talk about all kinds of things, but not when their car breaks down. They take it to an auto mechanic. When the air conditioning breaks down, they take it to an air conditioning mechanic. You can go to the baker. He can say, well, I don't know. Check the input and output. He doesn't know. So everybody likes to feel competent. Everybody likes to feel they want to participate. The question is, can they? The only way you can participate in anything is to offer a tangible, referential description. If you believe that all things are affected by other things, it means that human behavior is predictable. If you believe that conditioning shapes behavior. If you think it's inborn, you can't think about it. You can't predict. You say, who the hell knows what the inborn emotion is going to be? So if you can't predict it, you can't deal with it. But if you believe that people scratch their head because it itches, or they think it itches, that's all right, as long as you know why. But every action, a person adjusts their glasses, it means ear pressure is bad, or the vision is not good, or if the glasses are too low, they move it up. You have to ask them why you move the glasses. You can take guesses, but that's not why they move their eyeglasses. If you believe that human behavior is based upon what Skinner is known for as reinforcement, he says people will do anything if you reinforce them in their terms. So, person says, do you allow for individuality in that society? Individuality to me means differences in values by different aspects of the culture. We can't afford all kinds of individuals. Then a guy wants to wear a suit with 3 creases in it. Well, that's individual, but it's unsane individuality. Unsane individuality is when people say, I got a new dance, it's this. You don't need to get up. Well, that's an individual. But that dance doesn't do anything for people. Convincing them of that, do they want to know, what do you think of this type dancing? Well, I would say it's no different or no better, no worse than existing dancing. But I can't deal with that kind of problem. If I say dancing is a nothing thing, I mean, what does it contribute? It contributes to the well-being of people. They feel good dancing. Is that important? Well, what if they want to see a bullfight and they feel good watching a bullfight? Feel good is not the ultimate answer. It's the collective utility of the answer that I would go by. What will benefit people most? To know about basic things, how they work, how a flashlight works, how automobiles are interconnected, how we relate to the environment. If you say man is part of nature, say without food man cannot survive. That's what I mean by that, when I say he's part of nature. If oxygen is not in the air, he will die. So he thinks he's part of nature because he doesn't know that we depend on nitrogen. Lightning fixes the nitrogen in the soil. It makes it available to plants. Now, is that the purpose of lightning? No. Lightning occurs and the nitrogen becomes modified. But lightning is not there to modify the nitrogen. You can tell by nitrogen would be, electricity would flow only in the ground and modify the nitrogen only. It wouldn't go through the atmosphere and hit a tree and a little girl on a bicycle. Then it means it wasn't designed for a purpose. If you have ice weather, say the purpose of winter is to give us a change in season. We need change. Well, the people who live in the tropics never heard of winter time that are brought up there. And they wouldn't know what you're talking about. If they say, what is the winter for? You say, well, it's to give us a change in season. The average person, not being a meteorologist, meaning a student of weather, doesn't know what questions to ask. But there are a lot of kids that would love to participate. So they'll say, what if a person doesn't want to live in that city? They're looking for participation. If you say, The water supply is not even in all the houses. Can you make it even so that all people can get water when they want it? That's what they want to know. But you can't say, what if I don't want to live in that city? That's just bringing up an argument, you see, for the recognition of participation. So real participation is how would you acclimate people to this design if they were brought up to believe in individual housing. You can't do that unless you tell them where people get their values from. If you live in an igloo or a thatched hut or a wigwam, those become normal to you. So your assumption that you've answered a person's question is an assumption unless you ask them, what do you think I mean? And they come up with something entirely different, say apparently I was unable to get that across. Or they don't have the background to understand what went wrong with the electronics. If you tell them the kidney and the spleen are not working properly, they say, oh, but they don't know anything. In order to know things, you have to get the book, Handbook of the Spleen, and Handbook on the Anatomy of different organs, how they work, what they do. Do the organs work, or are they controlled by emotions? Well, if you study emotions and the effect on organs, which is another subject altogether, the psychology of illness, it isn't always the failure of the kidney. It could be the failure of love of life in you. If your whole family is killed in an automobile accident, you may not want to live anymore. And they call that the will to die. And there are some people that can will death. I know it seems strange, but they go to bed at night and they don't feel alive, and they don't sleep well, they miss the other people, and their life has been cut, what they call their life. Now, if people live in a world where everybody's friendly, everybody's concerned about your well-being, when your closest friend dies, you're not left alone. How am I going to pay the rent? How am I going to eat? People live alone today. And I would say that if everybody tried to work to enhance the lives of everybody else, you wouldn't be desolate when somebody died in your family that was important to you. There is no communication with people that are not schooled in that discipline. So what you have to do is teach them that discipline first, that their behavior is not their own, it's shaped by culture. If you can envision, do that first, and then go off in a different direction, you're better off. If you showed them, if they believe that every person is an individual and individuality is within the person, if you can't disprove that, get out of the conversation, because you can't take it anywhere. So if you get mad at somebody, it means you really don't understand this subject. So if a guy says, you want to fight? He believes that he can, if he beats you in a fight, he's right. He may be better at fighting than you are, but it doesn't make him right. A lot of normal people believe that the guy who's better at fighting is right. Right is might. You've heard that shit. And so, if you're right, you can get the shit kicked out of you. Do you understand questions and answers? There are no answers. Answer is, can you answer this question? What makes war? Like, there's an answer. This is the answer. It's a whole study of kingdoms and habits of thought, and this nation is different than the other nation and believes their way is the right way, so they try to kill the other nation. Are they bad? No. Are they murderers? No. They're victims of a different culture. So, if you can't get the people, instead of saying they're dumb, either you don't have the time to build a referential language, or they don't have the background to understand you. That's possible. I wanted you to get this bit so you don't waste your time. I don't talk to people that raise questions like, you can't predict human behavior. I can't do anything with